Hello, high school language arts flex class students. Are you ready for our next lecture? You've had some writing already this week. Please post questions if you on anything that I send. If you have questions about this recording, this lecture, if you have questions about any of the writing assignments, please, please, please ask questions in class. Okay, always know that I am willing to give more details than what I have given. All right, let's get on with the lecture today. 1800 to 1870. There's a lot going on in the United States. This is a huge time of change. I mean, from 1800 to 1870, it's just a totally different nation almost by the time you get to the end of this time period. One interesting fact, November 1st, 1800, US President John Adams is the first president to live in the actual White House. So before this time, presidents lived in different locations, but now we have a formal presidential home and a presidential office. January 30th, 1803, discussions by New Orleans began when Monroe and Livingston sailed to Paris. And it ends with a complete purchase of the Louisiana Purchase 3 months later. It's a huge time of physical growth for the country. Also, lots of innovations going on during this time, lots of inventions. Here's one example. August 17th, 1807, the first practical steamboat journey was made by Robert Fulton in the steamboat Clermont. Let's look at some other things that were going on. War of 1812 begins, the United States and Britain. In 1819, again, a time of growth, Alabama becomes the 22nd state, and the U.S. pays Spain $5 million for the Florida territory. So you can see by then we have 22 states, and we're still purchasing new territories to claim more and more land in the North American continent. Then we're really starting to form political parties at this point and have some competing ideologies of who believes what in this nation. We're becoming much more diverse, so people have a lot of different conflicting ideas. For example, as we know, during this time period, there was a lot of conflicting beliefs on whether slavery should be allowed. So we have the Missouri Compromise in 1820 that was one of the first times that it became part of the official political discussion of how are we going to deal with this issue. In 1836, we had the Battle of the Alamo. You remember the war cry, remember the Alamo. It was a tragic siege, lost many lives there, but Texas remembered the Alamo and kept fighting for their independence. 1845 to 1847, big wave of Irish immigrants come to this nation. We're a formalized nation now. We have a lot of opportunities to offer people. Ireland was going through the Great Famine, and so we had a great migration of people to the United States looking for better opportunities. 1848, US President James K. Polk confirms that gold has been discovered, and we have gold fever and the gold rush, everybody going out to California. Then, of course, 1861 to 1865, the United States goes through the tragic Civil War. 5 days after the war ends, President Lincoln is assassinated. So we have War of 1812, we have Texas fighting for independence, we have the United States Civil War, we have exciting things going on also outside of those tragedies. We have gold rushes, White Houses built, steamboats, lots of innovation. So it's a huge, time of change, physical change in the nation, political change, ideologies, philosophies are changing. And so there's a lot going on. I like to put the literature in context of when it was written. Here are some things that were written during the time. You may, these are some books that at least go through and read the summary of some of these. Just Google them online. It's great. Some of these, pick one of these to read. Find something to read that you haven't read and pick one of these. I really challenge you to find one and read the literature of the time. Sense and Sensibility, Jane Austen, Swiss Family Robinson, Grimm's Fairy Tales, Pride and Prejudice, Frankenstein, I love Gothic literature, so I really have always enjoyed reading Frankenstein, The Count of Monte Cristo, The Scarlet Letter, Moby Dick, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Walden, Tale of Two Cities, Alice in Wonderland, Little Women, War and Peace, Tolstoy. Of course, all of these are not American literature. This is also around the world's literature. So this is things that are, well, not really around the world, more European and American. So pick one of these to get an idea. A lot of diverse topics covered here. I mean, everything from Pride and Prejudice to Sense and Sensibility to Frankenstein to Moby Dick to Walden. Huge, um, diverse writing styles in here. Lots of different approaches to literature going on in here. So, one period, literature is often divided up once we go back and study literature. We divide it into periods and group people together who write in similar writing styles. So we have the Romantic period. So it's an artistic, literary, and intellectual movement originated in Europe toward the end of the 18th century. And it was really at its peak from 1800 to 1840. It's funny because the title of it, a lot of people think, oh, romance books. No, they're not writing about love. The American romantic writers are Washington Irving, James Fenimore Cooper, William Cullen Bryant, and Edgar Allan Poe. This group is all about the imagination instead of reason. The period before this was let's logically think through and let's put that logic in our literature. This is like, how unique can we be? What can your imagination come up with and put down on paper? It also stressed intuition as an important part of learning. Don't just follow facts, but take those facts and use your intuition and say, now what's going to happen next? Or what direction should I go in life? They celebrate nature, individuality, and common people. They also honor the role of women in society and believe that solitude can be just as important as society. Yeah, it's not all about social status. It becomes more individuality and what is it that I want to do and how do I incorporate times to think as a writer. So a lot of change here going on. Now, we also have something called the New England Renaissance, 1840 to 1855. 1837, Ralph Waldo Emerson gave a famous oration known as the American Scholar. What was that? Like he was challenging people in the United States to become intellectually independent and break from following only European thought. He was like, we are a nation. We need to be developing our own philosophies here. We need to define who we are. So he wanted American writers to interpret and help define their own culture. What was happening on this soil? What were we seeing as we were developing as a nation? So Boston writers in particular began to publish new works that would be considered unique in literature. Then in that group, Emerson and Thoreau became known as transcendentalists. Now, this term, some people can give you a very set definition, but it really can mean different things from related to various authors. It's a little bit vague, it's a little bit hard to define. It's related to merging literary, philosophical, and religious thoughts. So that's why it's a little bit different in each person because it's depending on what your religion and your philosophy is when you mix it with your literary thoughts. It blends mystical and romantic literature at times. All right, suggested readings from Thoreau. You got just search for Walden. It's also called, a lot of people refer to it as On Walden's Pond. It's when Thoreau went into nature to live and to write. This is one of my favorite quotes from it. I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discovered that I had not lived. I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all of the marrow of life, to live so sturdily and Spartan like as to put to rout all that was not life, to cut a broad swath through and shave close, to drive life into a corner and reduce it to its lowest terms. So this is what Thoreau is saying. This is why I did. This is why I went to Walden's Pond. I went to live deliberately. I wanted to reduce life down and see what is my life really about. Here's what I'm going to talk about today, though. Edgar Allan Poe, 1809 to 1849, American writer, poet, editor, and literary critic, talking about using the imagination. Poe, like, gets the prize for that. If you have not read any Edgar Allan Poe works, a lot of them are short stories. Look them up. A lot of them are online on legitimate sites for free because the copyright is off. You can also find copies in your local library. Poe is best known for his poetry and short stories, particularly his tales of mystery and the macabre. He is widely regarded as a central figure of Romanticism in the United States and of American literature. Now, remember that Romanticism means using the imagination, figuring out individuality, using your intuition about what's going to happen next. So he's got some amazing tales. Now, we've talked about this. I put it back in here just for a minute to talk about it's a rejection of order and calm and harmony, balance. It was a reaction against the Enlightenment and against rationalism. Poe was like, life is not rational. Let me tell you what can happen in the human mind. And he has a lot of psychological horror and a lot of psychological tales of what can go on in the human mind that is irrational and imaginative. So there's things in literature that in Poe's works that nobody had written about before. If you have never read The Raven, here's part of it. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. "Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly remember it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, and for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. He's talking about the death of someone he loved. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. Now, I skipped some in between, so go back and read the whole Raven. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor, shall be lifted nevermore. A lot of creepiness in that poem. Go back and read the full poem. That's a challenge. Find it online. Here's some of his quotes. "Those who dream by day are cognizant of many things which escape those who dream only by night. Believe nothing you hear and only half that you see." So he's telling people, there's a lot about going on with the imagination. Where I called on to define very briefly the term art, I should call it the reproduction of what the senses perceive in nature through the veil of the soul. The mere imitation, however accurate, of what is in nature entitles no man to the sacred name of artist. Here's another he wrote in a letter. "Literature is the most noble of professions. In fact, it is about the only one fit for a man. For my own part, there is no seducing me from the path." All right, Louisa May Alcott, 1831 to 1888. Louisa May Alcott was an American novelist, short story writer, and poet. best known as the author of Little Women and its sequel, Little Men and Joe's Boy. So, in some ways, quite different from Edgar Allan Poe. If you were to read Poe and turn around and read Louisa May Alcott, you would see a huge difference there. But they're both all about the imagination and intuition and the changes in society. I mean, Little Women is a book that promotes intelligence in women and shows strong female characters. She was raised in New England, and her parents had a lot of financial setbacks throughout her life. She was raised with her three sisters, published poems, short stories, thrillers, juvenile tales under the name Flora Fairfield, because a lot of what she wrote was very different. Early in her career, she also used pen names such as A.M. Bernard, under which she wrote lurid short stories and sensational novels for adults that focused on passion and revenge. She used a pen name for that because many publishers did not want a woman, did not think a woman should write anything like that. The great success of Little Women gave Alcott financial independence and created the demand for more books. Over the final years of her life, she turned out a steady stream of novels, short stories, mostly for young people. Here's a quote from the Louisa May Alcott organization. The Alcotts were a famous yet flawed family who firmly believed in the power of unconditional love, personal agency, and social justice. Discover the many ways in which they impacted literature, education, philosophy, art, reforms of all kind, and each other. They really supported equal education for all races and for all genders. As a child, Alcott briefly lived with her family in a failed commune, helped her parents hide enslaved people who had escaped with the help from the Underground Railroad, and had discussions about women's rights with Margaret Fuller. So she knew and was active with a lot of leaders, political leaders at the time. Throughout her life, she socialized with family and friends such as Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Nathaniel Hawthorne. Her family did not keep the men and women separate. The women were in the room with the men having discussions. Alcott had access to valuable educational experiences because of these connections. She read books in Emerson's library, learned about botany at Walden Pond with Thoreau. She also learned through conversations while she socialized with abolitionist Frederick Douglass and women's suffrage activist Julia Ward Howe. So look up Alcott's life. Absolutely fascinating. Okay, fun facts. Again, in 1861, at the beginning of the U.S. Civil War, Alcott sewed Union uniforms in Concord, and the next year enlisted as an Army nurse. In 1863, she published hospital sketches about her experiences. Okay, now here's a funny one. A lot of people think Little Women, all serious. Okay, this is about also how she felt about still as a woman having to do a lot of manual labor around the house. Queen of my tub, I merrily sing, while the white foam rises high, and sturdily wash and rinse and wring and fasten the clothes to dry. So by this tub, she's talking about the washing tub where you had to scrub the clothes. Then out in the fresh air they swing under the sunny sky. I wish we could wash from our hearts and our souls the stains of the week away, and let water and air by their magic make ourselves as pure as they. Then on the earth there would be indeed a glorious washing day. So she's mixing a little bit of her religion in there. Along the path of a useful life, while heart's ease ever bloom, the busy mind has no time to think of sorrow or care or gloom, and anxious thoughts may be swept away as we busily wield a broom. I am glad a task to me is given to labor it day by day, for it brings me health and strength and hope, and cheerily learn to say, head you may think, heart you may feel, but hand you shall work always. Now, even though she did lift up women's ability to write and be educated, her family also believed in hard work. So she's not totally complaining about this. They believed that every person needed to work all during the day, stay busy, and that was the only way to bring about change. I'm not going to read this whole one, but this is just another one she wrote. about elves and moonlight and fairy song. You can stop it and read it if you want to. But she had, a really good imagination. That's what I was talking about romanticism here. They're not just talking about um, the common world. They're stretching their imagination as authors. Here's a quote: "Have regular hours for work and play. Make each day both useful and pleasant, and prove that you understand the worth of time by employing it well. Then youth will be delightful, old age will bring few regrets, and life will become a beautiful success." Here's another one: "I've got the key to my castle in the air, but whether I can unlock the doors remains to be seen." Part of that is referring to dreams that we have, and society doesn't always let us fulfill those dreams. So, for that time, women, she wasn't allowed to automatically just publish what she wanted to at the beginning of her career. She had a lot of limitations based on finances and her gender. So, she knew what her dream was, but she didn't know if she could unlock the door. "Simple, genuine goodness is the best capital to found the business of this life upon. It lasts when fame and money fail, and is the only riches we can take out of this world with us." There's another one: "Nothing is impossible to a determined woman." There's another one: "I believe that it is as much a right and duty for women to do something with their lives as for men, and we are not going to be satisfied with such frivolous parts as you give us." So she's saying, watch out, women authors are here to stay. So look up some works of Louisa May Alcott. At least go online and read summaries so you get an idea, and so read some more quotes, because really, two fascinating people here. Very different, but both very fascinating. And we'll finish with the semicolon. Here we go, grammar review. When there are two independent clauses, complete sentences, that can stand alone as sentences, and they're not joined by one of the fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so, the semicolon is only correct if it can be replaced by a period. A semicolon is used instead of a period to show that two independent clauses are related to the same thought. You're like, what? So you're hooking two sentences together without a fanboys, without one of the fanboys. Okay. Here's examples. In each of these, it's because they're related to the same thought. Caitlin left before breakfast, semicolon, Josh stayed until after lunch. I rented a car and drove to New York, semicolon, Chris wanted to fly there. See, there's no conjunction. There's no words in between the two sentences, and, for, nor, but. While we were at the fair, my dog won a ribbon in the dog show, semicolon, it hangs proudly in my room. I like cats, semicolon. However, I'm allergic to them. However is not a coordinating junction that takes a comma. Fanboys only. So even though a lot of people think it is, if it's however is what connects them, it gets a semicolon. Semicolons are also used in a list of items to help with clarity. The semicolon can be used in a list that has other conjunctions that are connected with commas. And so it'd be confusing if you put another comma. For example, look at this. Several people are coming to my graduation, including my aunts, comma, Julie and Cindy, semicolon, my roommates, comma, Catherine and Megan, semicolon, my grandparents, semicolon, and my parents. This is letting us know we're grouping what's in gray and yellow together. And so my aunts, Julie and Cindy, you need a semicolon, because notice what it'll look like without it. Look at this example down here. Several people are coming to my graduation, including my aunts, comma, Julie and Cindy, comma, my roommates, comma, Catherine and Megan, comma, my grandparents, comma, and my parents. Without the semicolon, it's not really clear how many people are coming. Like, if you don't know, are the aunts coming? And then Julie and Cindy are coming, and then roommates are coming, and then Catherine and Megan are coming. When you use the semicolon up at the top, you can see that it groups people together. So it's very clear then how many people we need to set the table for. Okay? Ask questions if you have anything that you're unsure about, okay? Keep turning in writing, send questions. If I give you feedback, you don't understand it, ask me. And I hope this is helpful. If there's anything that you want me to cover, you have a question about something that happens for the time period that we talked about, please ask. I'm willing to put a little research into something if I don't know the answer, but I might already have the answer for you. So hope you have a great, 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 great week.